Unexplained Secrets Exposed, 5 spine-chilling night drive horror tales that haunt the dark road. The Davis family never thought a simple drive home after the Maplewood Harvest Festival would lead them into the depths of a living nightmare. It was supposed to be an evening filled with laughter, the smell of cider, and the glow of pumpkins lining the streets. But now, at midnight, as they piled into their trusty minivan, an eerie fog settled in fast. Thick and heavy, it wrapped around their vehicle like a suffocating blanket, swallowing the road whole. And in that moment, fear took its place next to excitement. "Can you even see the road?" Dad asked, his voice breaking through the eerie silence. "Not at all," Mom replied, her eyes darting nervously in the rearview mirror to their youngest, Tommy. The tension gripped them, a familiar yet unwelcome anxiety pooling in Sarah's stomach. 17 and armed with her smartphone, Sarah felt a mix of dread and exhilaration. Her fingers danced over the screen as she thought about documenting everything, even the things that go bump in the night. And perhaps there was something darker lurking in this fog, some undiscovered truth waiting for its cover to be pulled away. With a thrill coursing through her, she whispered, "I'll catch us some stories tonight." "Turn that off, Sarah. Focus on the road," Mom said, her voice laced with anxiety. But it was too late. Sarah was already scanning the misty edges, searching for mysteries. As they maneuvered deeper into the fog, shadows shifted beyond their peripheral vision. Heart racing. Was that a figure? A ghostly hitchhiker lingered by the roadside, pale and haunting, half hidden in the weeping mist. Tommy's voice filled the van, pleading, "Can we stop? Please. What if it's dangerous?" Mom countered, yet Sarah's curiosity sparked like kindling around a fire. So many legends surrounded Maplewood, tales of restless spirits and ancient secrets. Her journalistic instincts tossed caution to the wind. They stopped, tension alive in the air. "Come on, let us just get a closer look," Sarah insisted, leaning forward, the thrill saturating her voice. As her parents exchanged reluctant glances, the fog seemed to press against the van, eager to swallow them whole. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Just then, with a sudden rush, the hitchhiker's face became partially visible, a look of desperation, eyes gleaming with something dark, something unresolved. That feeling of dread washed over the family, the fog now rimmed with tension so thick it almost had a pulse. Each encounter with the lost souls hidden there, the hitchhiker, a cry for help echoing within the dampened silence, became a harrowing reflection of the family's own buried struggles. The whispers of secrets left unspoken sought to weave through the very fabric of their drive, pulling at scabs never intended to be opened. The cracks in their familial bond became visible, illuminated fiercely by the shadows of the past. Were these specters simply figments of a fog-drenched imagination, or were they the harbingers of the truths they were too scared to confront? As fear settled into the marrow of their bones and the fog thickened, they realized they were hurtling towards something greater than mere fright. The darkness loomed closer. With every heartbeat, every foggy twist in the road, they felt themselves drawn further into the enigma. Would this family leave the fog whole, or would this night draw out the secrets, shrouded in mist, threatening to unravel them? As they ventured forth, questions echoed in Sarah's mind. Could they face the demons of the night and those within their own hearts, or would they lose themselves entirely? The fog was impenetrable. It felt wrong in ways they couldn't articulate, an oppressive weight pressing against the windows. Dad gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, as if holding on to the minivan would secure their safety. "Let us just go back," he suggested, a tremor in his voice barely disguising the tension in the air. "No," Sarah said, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "We're already here. We can't leave now." She jumped out of the car before anyone could argue. "Sarah. Her mom yelled, but she didn't turn back. The chill of the night wrapped around her as she stepped into the void of mist. Each breath sent a shiver down her spine. The hitchhiker still stood there, impossibly still, waiting. As Sarah approached, the figure emerged from the fog like a dark cloud considering its storm. The hitchhiker's skin gleamed ghostly, almost translucent, in the glow of the van's headlights. Desperation etched deep lines in their face, eyes wide with a haunting blend of fear and longing. "Please," the figure whispered, the words cutting through the thick fog. "Help me." Sarah's heart raced. She felt drawn to this spirit, pulled by an invisible thread. But there was a gnawing instinct telling her something was off, something was very wrong. Who are you?" she asked, voice shaking. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket. Should she film this? Capture the story of the night? No. Right now, there was something far more critical than views or likes. The hitchhiker tilted their head, as if struggling to find the words. "I'm lost, I can't find my way back." A deep, unsettling chill swept over her as she flicked her gaze back to the van. Tommy's little face contorted with worry, and Mom's eyes glistened with a mix of fear and confusion. "Mom! Tommy!" she called, her voice breaking. "Stay close," Mom warned, anxiety lacing her tone as she opened the minivan door, but Sarah shook her head, unwilling to turn away. There was something almost comforting about the hitchhiker's despair. "What do you mean lost?" Sarah asked, stepping even closer, her heart racing faster as the figure took a step toward her. "Where do you need to go?" "I need to find my way home," the hitchhiker replied, fingers trembling as they gestured back into the fog. "But I am forever trapped by this road." A knot twisted in Sarah's stomach. "Trapped? By what?" "It lives in the fog," the figure whispered, looking over Sarah's shoulder, eyes wide with horror. "It watches and waits." A low growl cut through the air, rumbling like thunder, and Sarah suddenly felt a pull at her soul as the ground beneath her began to tremble. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the ground, unwilling to escape the trap of the unknown. "Sarah! Get back here!" Mom's voice broke through the chaos, urgent and fearful. In that moment, something dark and shadowy flickered in the periphery, and fear clawed at Sarah's chest, fierce and insatiable. The hitchhiker's face twisted into a mask of anguish. "No! You must go! It's coming!" The figure vanished into the fog, leaving only echoes of its chilling warning swirling around. Breathless, Sarah finally turned to her family, shock etched across their faces. The moment hung heavy between them like the fog, charged with unspoken fears. "What was that?" Tommy whispered, wide-eyed. I don't know," Sarah stammered, heart pounding wildly. "But we need to leave. Now." With that, they scrambled back into the van as the growl intensified, vibrating through the very fabric of their being. As Dad started the engine, the heavy fog began swirling tighter, shadows weaving in and out, lurking just beyond the reach of the headlights, and then, just as they tore away, Sarah caught a glimpse of something moving in the mist behind them, a dark, undulating shape that shouldn't exist. A sense of foreboding flooded her, a troubling chill dancing on the back of her neck. As they sped off into the darkness, one question loomed larger than the rest: what had just been stirred in the depths of that fog, and would it follow them into the night? The road ahead twisted and turned, guiding them deeper into a mystery that refused to be left behind. The minivan rattled violently as it navigated the uneven road, each bump jarring Sarah from her spiraling thoughts. Her mind raced with visions of the hitchhiker, those piercing eyes, a warning that felt too real. The growl still echoed in her ears, an ominous reminder of what lurked behind them. "Did you see it, Sarah?" Dad's voice broke through the tension. The way he spoke was heavy with urgency, dread pulling at the edges of his words. It was a person," she stammered, trying to hold on to the fragments of her encounter. But something was wrong. It was asking for help. No more helping strangers. Mom interjected sharply, her gaze flitting nervously to the rearview mirror as if the fog itself had come alive and was stalking them. But it was scared. Sarah protested, her voice rising. It said it was trapped. It was warning us. And then, as if fate was aligning to test their resilience, the van's headlights flickered. The last glimmers of light faded, swallowed by the thick fog. They were plunged into an all-consuming darkness. The reality of their situation settled around them like a heavy shroud. "Hold on!" Dad shouted. He slammed the brakes as a figure emerged ahead, a glimpse of shape and shadow, a fleeting movement at the periphery of the headlights. Sarah strained to see through the fog, but the world beyond the windshield was a swirling abyss. "What is that?" Tommy whimpered, clutching his sister's arm with fingers that trembled. "I don't know." "I can't see," Sarah whispered back, her heart racing. Panic began to seep into the van, thick and toxic. The headlights fizzled again and then died, silence engulfed them, a pregnant pause filled with the sounds of their own ragged breaths and the very faint whisper of the wind, stirring in anticipation of something terrible. "Dad!" Sarah hissed, fear gripping her heart. "We can't stay here. We need to get out." "I'm trying." Dad's voice was sharp, but there was terror in it, too. The van sputtered and coughed. Just when hope seemed to wane, a burst of noise erupted, an unearthly howl, there and gone in an instant. Everyone froze, staring into the void, dread coiling tightly around their throats. "In the back! Look!" Tommy shouted suddenly, his voice piercing through the tension like a knife. Sarah whipped around, just in time to see mist swirling behind them, forming into shapes she didn't want to contemplate. Shadows danced, almost alive, thrashing and flickering in the rear windows as if something was crawling deliberately through the fog. Panic surged. "Let us go. Now!" Sarah screamed, but it was too late. The van struggled, shaking violently as Dad revved the engine, desperation clawing at his features. The howls came back again, louder, weaving in grief and rage an anguished symphony from the depths of the fog. "Get out of here!" Sarah yelled, opening the door, but Mom grasped her arm. "Stay inside. We don't know what's out there." Mom's voice quivered, a low rasp that filled the air with anxiety. "Please, we have to try." Sarah pleaded, glancing at Tommy whose eyes were wide with terror. She could see the reflections of flickering figures in the mist outside, swirling with purpose. "It's coming." Suddenly, the van lurched forward, a jolt that sent them careening down the road. The hiss of brakes gave way to the relentless roar of the engine as they barreled through the fog. But Sarah knew the shadows were still there, racing alongside them, an ominous presence refusing to be left behind, and just as they began to feel some relief, Sarah noticed in the rearview mirror the haunting vision of the hitchhiker standing resolutely where they had just been, an ethereal beacon amid the chaos. No longer pleading for help, but watching intently as if grasping the very essence of their souls. "What does it want?" Tommy whispered, fear clutching his voice like a vice. Though they were escaping, an unsettling truth settled in Sarah's heart. Whatever was in the fog had not finished with them, and surely, the worst was yet to come. As they tore into the night, the figures in the fog mirrored their speed, shadows elongating and twisting with every mile. But in escaping the fog, what had they truly unleashed? What awaited them on the other side of their hasty decisions? The engine sputtered as the minivan roared into the night, a defiant cry against the suffocating grip of the fog. But it wasn't the sound of freedom. It was a desperate plea clashing with a fear that loomed larger than the veils of mist around them. "Stay close, everyone," Dad gritted his teeth, his knuckles turning white against the steering wheel. The van's headlights flickered weakly, casting sickly beams that revealed nothing but swirling shadows. Each cloud of fog seemed to pulse with a life of its own, drifting and collapsing as if responding to some unspoken command, an ancient curse wrapped in the whispers of the night. "Is it gone?" Tommy asked, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling like a frightened bird. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her heart racing. She glanced back. The hitchhiker was no longer visible, but the weight of their encounter bore down on her heavily, urging her to question everything they had just witnessed. What if the warning wasn't just a plea for help, but a foreboding of what awaited them? Suddenly, a shriek pierced through the silence, raw and piercing, a chilling melody that sent shivers up Sarah's spine. "What was that?" she asked, her voice catching. "I think it came from the right side," Dad said, eyes darting to the mirrors, every nerve in his body on high alert. He swerved the van slightly, heart pounding as he felt the pull of something unseen. "For the love of God, just keep driving," Mom shouted, panic steeping her voice. They didn't understand. They had no idea what lay behind them, but they could feel it, creeping closer with every breath. The road twisted and turned, narrowed by towering trees that leaned in as if to eavesdrop on their terror. The fog descended thicker as though absorbing the light, knitting shadows into a fabric of dread. Sarah's breaths quickened, and with it, her resolve. There was something sinister waiting in the folds of darkness, something far worse than whatever haunted the back seat. Minutes felt like hours. Just as she thought they were escaping, the van wobbled violently, bouncing off an unseen obstacle that sent a jolt through their bodies. "What was that?" Sarah yelled, clutching the armrest. "I don't know." "It wasn't a pothole," Dad replied through clenched teeth, panic creeping into his voice. The fog thinned momentarily, revealing a twisted figure crouched at the edge of the road, a reflection of the hitchhiker, distorted and contorted. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. It wasn't just a person anymore. No longer pleading for help, it seemed to be beckoning them closer, luring them into the depths of the unknown. "Don't look!" Mom shouted, but Sarah couldn't tear her gaze away, as if something magnetic held her eyes captive. The figure straightened, stretching tall and gaunt. It pointed a long, bony finger directly at her, and a wave of ice-cold terror crashed over her. The shadows behind it began to pulse, growing, reaching out like tendrils. "Drive!" she screamed, snapping back to reality. "I'm trying." Dad's voice was frantic now, raw power surging through the van as he pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The tires screamed as they clawed for grip. The road ahead seemed to narrow into an endless tunnel veiled in darkness. The howl returned, louder and sharper, wrapping around the van in a suffocating embrace, an echo of lost souls crying out for release. "Faster! We need to get out!" Tommy shouted, yet the air felt thicker, heavier with something unnameable. Sarah's heart raced. Nothing felt right, not anymore. They had uncorked something that couldn't be put back. Suddenly, the engine coughed, sputtered, and then fell silent. The lights blinked off. Dread settled in like a well-placed rock, ensuring they wouldn't be able to escape this cursed night without paying a price. "Get out! Get out!" Sarah yelled, her heart pounding like a war drum as the figures in the fog began closing in, evil and relentless. The van's doors swung open, and a rush of icy air flooded in, mingling with the fear that now wrapped around them tightly. Something was approaching, a shadow. Relentless, unsettling, and it knew their names. It wasn't a supernatural force, it was something much worse, hinting at their deepest fears and probing at their innermost weaknesses. And as an unholy silence fell over the scene, punctuated only by the whisper of the wind, Sarah knew one thing for certain. They were not safe at all. What would happen if they couldn't escape the shadows that followed? What if the night had just begun to unfold its terrifying secrets? The silence shattered like glass, and chaos erupted as Sarah bolted from the van, her heart pounding viciously in her chest. The cold air brushed against her skin, electrifying every nerve. She didn't look back, she just ran. Her feet pounded against the gravel, a frantic rhythm echoing her racing thoughts. What was chasing them? What were those shadows? "Sarah!" Dad's panicked voice followed her, desperate and strained. She could hear Tommy sobbing, and instinct kicked in. She had to protect them. She couldn't let fear consume them, but then came the noise. The howling engulfed her like a wave. It twisted the air, sharp and agonizing. Momentarily, she hesitated, glancing back at the van. It stood still, dark and foreboding. And then she saw it, slinking out of the fog, a figure cloaked in shadows, moving unnaturally. Cold dread wrapped around her spine. The hiker's distortion was more alive now, more sinister, twisting into forms that made her stomach churn. "Get back here." Mom's voice cracked, pulling Sarah into a vortex of conflicting emotions: fear, protectiveness, urgency. "No, it's not safe," Sarah shouted, her throat raw. But the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs grew closer. The figure advanced, long limbs pulling it impossibly forward, seemingly gliding along the ground. It reached out with that bony finger, beckoning her once more, darker than the void itself. In that moment, cold realization hit her: this wasn't a mere encounter. It wasn't just a hitchhiker lost in the woods. It was something else, something hungry and alive. Her instincts screamed for her to flee farther into the woods. She turned away from the chilling embrace of the fog and ran towards the trees, darting between trunks and underbrush, the bark scraping against her arms like angry fingers. Behind her, she heard Dad urging everyone back inside, his voice swelling with terror. "Go, go, go." His words surged through the air, puncturing the tension like a knife. The van's doors shut with a heavy thud, but Sarah kept running. She knew there was no way to escape it all by hiding. They were marked, maybe even cursed. She reached a clearing, breathing heavily, scanning the darkened tree line. And then she saw it again, creeping into view. The shadows twisted and morphed, revealing glimpses of horrid expressions, faces twisted in agony, mouths open wide in silent screams. They were reflections of herself and her family, each one a memory threatening to collapse under the weight of fear. Terrified, she stumbled backward and landed hard on the ground. "Sarah!" Tommy yelled, his small voice cracking in the night. But their cries pulled her from the edge of the abyss as she sensed it closing in. There was a fleeting moment of connection, a glimpse into the darkness that held their sins, teasing her, taunting. A collective howl drove her back to her feet, fueled by the love for her family. They were her anchor even when the ground felt precarious beneath her. "Stay together," she shouted, adrenaline sparking her voice. She pivoted and sprinted back toward the van, but the path twisted and turned like a serpent, elongating unnaturally as if the forest itself sought to keep them apart. "Sarah, run!" Dad's voice rang in her ears as she reached out for Tommy, who was hesitating, caught in the allure of the immeasurable mystery that shimmered ahead. "No!" Sarah lunged forward, grasping his arm with fierce determination. The grip of the shadows tightened as they drew closer. They had only moments left. They needed to make a choice. Could they harness the love and loyalty binding them together, or would the shadows effortlessly drag them into their vortex of despair? "Get in!" Dad shouted again, panic seeping through his tone. But would even that small sanctuary hold? Just as Sarah pulled Tommy closer, she caught a glimpse of the figure again, hunched low as if waiting, plotting. Its long, shadowy form twisted once more, and for a heartbeat she thought she heard her name echoing back at her. What if they were the next to join the countless echoes? The world spun dizzyingly around her. "Now!" She screamed, the urgency of their survival weighing heavily on her shoulders. But as they turned to flee back toward the van, the shadows erupted behind them, shape-shifting and surging, mouths wide open as if the darkness itself was ready to swallow them whole. Would they make it back into the van before it was too late? Or would the truth lurking within the fog devour them whole? Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she yanked Tommy along, his small frame trembling with fear. The van loomed ahead, a beacon of safety amidst the encroaching chaos. Yet each step felt heavier, as if the ground beneath them conspired to pull them back into the shadow's grasp. "Faster!" she urged him, glancing over her shoulder. The figure was closer now, its distorted shape creeping forward with a malevolent intent. She could see its eyes, or maybe not. It was hard to tell in the smoke of the fog, but there was something primal in that gaze, something that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. Finally, they broke free from the trembling grasp of the trees and stumbled into the clearing by the van. Dad's frantic voice pierced through the fear. "Get in. Hurry." She released Tommy's arm and launched herself toward the sliding door, heart racing with a strange mixture of hope and dread. Tom's hesitance gave her a moment's panic. "Tommy, come on," she yelled, reaching back for him. The shadows grew restless, swirling with a life of their own as if savoring the moment. They watched, waiting, as the darkness embraced the air with a suffocating grip. "Sarah." Tommy's small voice strained against the howl of the wind. "It's calling me." "No." It was a whisper of a scream as fear clawed its way up Sarah's throat. She did the only thing she could think of, running back to him and throwing her arms around him. "You have to listen to me." In that instant, the figure lunged, its long fingers extending with unnerving speed, reaching for them. Sarah pulled Tommy closer, feeling the heat from the darkness as it twisted and surged around them. "Please," she gasped, the words barely escaping her lips, time warped, suspended in the stillness just before chaos. And then they were moving. The van door finally opened wide as Dad reached out with frantic determination. "Now!" In the van. With a surge of adrenaline, they dashed through the door, Sarah pushing Tommy ahead of her. It slammed shut behind them with a bone-chilling thud. The moment the door clicked locked, a spine-tingling howling erupted outside, an angry roar that shook the van. "Drive. Just drive," Sarah urged, heart thundering as she turned back to see the figure fleeting in the shadows, melding with the fog. Mom was already at the wheel, her hands trembling on the steering wheel as Dad pounded the dashboard with fervor. "I'm trying," Mom replied, her voice quaking. The engine sputtered unhelpfully, echoing their fear. The shadows pressed against the van's windows, sending ripples of dread through the vehicle. "Go! Go, go, go!" hailed Dad, his tone a mix of authority and panic. The engine growled back to life just as the figure lunged toward them. A scream tore at the fabric of reality as the van lurched forward, gaining momentum, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they'd only escaped for now. As they careened down the darkened road, she couldn't help but glance back. There were shadows in the trees, shadows that flickered with ominous movements, whispers echoing in the night. "You can't run forever," a disembodied voice hissed. It curled around her like fog, tangling into her mind. "Did you hear that?" she rasped, eyes wide with fear. She could see Tommy trembling in his seat, his wide eyes reflecting their terror. "What?" Dad asked, glancing nervously into the rearview mirror. "Nothing," she said, although doubt coiled in her chest. The van raced forward, but the road ahead felt endless, a shifting serpent that led them deeper into the unknown. Shadows danced outside, an endless chase as darkness clawed at the van's shell. As they sped past the strange trees, Sarah felt an undeniable pull, a magnetic dread drawing her gaze back again. The echoing howl of the figure rattled her bones. "Where are we going?" Tommy whispered, his voice small amidst the chaos. "We just need to get away." Sarah forced a smile that felt fragile and thin, her heart sinking at the thought that maybe, just maybe, they weren't truly safe. That thought lingered like a taunting wisp on the edges of her consciousness, growing more insistent. What if those shadows wanted more than just a chase? What if they were destined to return? The road twisted ahead, and Sarah knew they were heading towards something unknown, something that would either offer them salvation or doom. As they turned a corner, a sign loomed out of the fog: Dead Man's Hollow. The name sent chills racing down her spine. "No!" she gasped, "this isn't right." But as they sped onward, the shadows thickened around them, and soon, the van's headlights flickered ominously. What could possibly await them in Dead Man's Hollow? The van's headlights flickered again, sending a jolt of panic through Sarah. Shadows darted past the windows, swirling like dark spirits eager to reclaim their prey. The tension inside the vehicle grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah's heart raced, pounding in her chest like a war drum, drowning out the desperate pleas of her younger brother. "Why are we here?" Tommy whimpered, his little hands clenching the seat. Fear etched deep lines into his innocent face. Just hold on." Mom's voice trembled as she gripped the steering wheel tighter, veins straining against her skin. The headlights illuminated the twisted trees lining the road, their branches reaching out, claw-like hands grasping blindly. "Stay focused. We need to stay in front of it." Dad barked, his eyes flicking from the rearview mirror to the road ahead, desperate for a glimmer of hope. Sarah's mind raced. What lurked behind them? What waited in the suffocating darkness? The echo of whispers still brushed at the edges of her consciousness. "You can't run forever." It felt like a promise, a sinister thread weaving through her thoughts. Mom accelerated, the engine growling, but the van felt sluggish, trapped in the mire of dread. She glanced at the fuel gauge. "We might not have enough gas." The word sliced through the air, sharp and cold. "No!" Sarah cried, dread crashing within her like a tidal wave. "We can't stop." But the road narrowed ahead, flanked by shadows that twisted like serpents. The van began to sputter, the engine stammering in protest as if sharing their anxiety. Come on," Dad shouted, willing the vehicle to propel them forward. A sudden, wrenching noise filled the air, the sound of something slamming against their side. Mom gasped, jerking the wheel instinctively. Sarah shrieked, gripping Tommy's shoulder tightly to keep him steady. "What was that?" Tommy's voice quivered, breaking the chaotic silence. "Nothing. Just keep your eyes forward." Sarah snapped, but panic gripped her heart. The shadows at the edges of her vision seemed to pulse, breathing in unison with the van. Suddenly, there was a loud crack. The rear window shattered, raining glass into the back seat. Sarah whipped around just in time to see the figure, the grotesque shape, now partially illuminated by the van's headlights. It was closer than ever, twisting and contorting, the darkness shrouding any features. It lunged again, fingers stretched out, black claws slicing through the air, and the sound of its breath filled the van hot and sinister. "Drive faster!" Sarah screamed, her voice breaking. "Go, go, go!" Mom pressed her foot down harder, the tires screeching against the asphalt as they surged forward. But the figure was relentless, its form shifting and gliding, not entirely human but undeniably terrifying. "Help!" Tommy cried, tears spilling down his cheeks as he buried his face in Sarah's arm. "Shut your eyes. Don't look." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, her heart racing even faster. The road continued to twist before them like a nightmarish ride, the sign for Dead Man's Hollow looming ever closer. "We have to get out of here," she pleaded. A loud thump reverberated through the van, rocking them violently. Then silence fell, like the calm before a storm. Sarah swiveled her head, breathless. The figure had vanished. "What happened?" Dad asked, panic evident in his voice. "I don't know." Sarah shouted, eyes darting back to the rear as shadows continued to linger at the edges of their vision. A sense of foreboding settled thickly around them. As they raced past the ominous sign, the hollow loomed ahead, a gaping mouth in the night, eager to swallow them whole. "What's in there?" Tommy whispered, a tremor in his voice. "I don't know, but we have to find out," Sarah caught herself saying. As terrifying as everything was, a sliver of curiosity pierced her fear. Suddenly, the van jolted harshly, sputtering one last gasp before the engine hissed and died, leaving them stranded just as they entered Dead Man's Hollow. The shadows closed in, whispering secrets that slithered into her mind. What if the only way to escape was to confront them? The question hung in the air like a thick mist, pregnant with possibility. What awaited them inside the hollow? The air inside the van stilled, the only sound the desperate beat of Sarah's heart against the oppressive silence. Darkness enveloped them as if the trees had conspired, leaning inward in a pact to smother any light. A shudder ran through Sarah as she peered through the remnants of the shattered rear window, hoping against hope for a sign of their pursuer. Nothing, just the void beyond, thick and suffocating. "Mom, what do we do?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper, the tremor betraying his fear. "Stay here," Mom replied, trying to sound brave but failing. "I'll go check the engine." Before she could unbuckle her seatbelt, Sarah shot her a look. "No. You can't leave us. I'll be right back." Mom insisted, her voice tinged with resolve, but as she opened the van door, the hinges groaned like a warning strike. Eyes glued to the dark trees outside, Sarah felt something shift in the shadows. A prickling sensation ran down her spine. "Mom, please don't go." But it was too late. The door swung open, and Mom stepped out, swallowed instantly by the night. "Mom!" Tommy cried, panic erupting new tears. Sarah held him tight, feeling his small, trembling body against her. They waited, breath caught in their chests, every second stretching forever as they listened for the familiar sounds of her footsteps. Time slipped painfully by before a faint rustling came from the distance. Sarah dared to look out. Her heart sank as she caught a glimpse of Mom darting back towards them, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, the grotesque figure emerged again, a grotesque silhouette, undulating and dark. The claws reached forward, eager and hungry for their slice of flesh. "Get in. Hurry." Mom's voice was laced with fear. She dove back inside the van just as the figure lunged toward her. They were cramped, the atmosphere thick with dread. "Go. Start the engine," she cried, frantically slamming the door. The tension in the van was like a coiled spring waiting to snap. Dad yanked the key, but only silence responded. "Damn it. Come on." The figure was now at the window, the breath hot and fetid against the glass. Its grotesque face pressed close, swirling shadows obscuring its features, save for the glint of bone-white fangs in a sinister grin. "Please, start," Sarah begged, her hands shaking as she clutched Tommy's arm tighter. "Just hold on." Dad's face was pale, his hands moving frantically across the dashboard. "Come on, baby, come on." The van shuddered, then with a low growl, the engine roared to life. "Go! Go!" Sarah shouted. Mom hit the gas, the tires squealing, and they lurched forward. But not before the figure lashed out, claw scraping against the side of the van. Sarah screamed, twisting her body to see it tumble backward, the darkness melding back into the trees. "What was that?" Tommy shouted, eyes nearly popping with terror. I don't know." She gasped, feeling cold sweat prickling down her back, but as they raced deeper into the hollow, the shadows thickened. It felt like they were jumping from one nightmare into another. The trees around them began to twist and bend unnaturally, almost alive as if embracing the darkness within. It wasn't just the shadows anymore, it was the very essence of fear pervading the air. Mom struggled with the steering wheel as the van jostled violently on the uneven path. "We need to keep moving." "Where will we go?" Dad whispered, pale, his voice small, nearly snatched away by the howling wind. "Just keep going," Mom replied, fear etched in every line of her face, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. Suddenly, the headlights blinked, flickering again, casting a desperate light over the encroaching night. And that's when they saw it, a figure standing just ahead on the road, blocking their escape. "Stop!" Sarah shrieked, panic exploding inside her. Mom slammed her foot down, tires squealing, but the figure didn't move. It was just standing there, waiting. "What now?" Dad's voice barely broke through the rush of adrenaline. "I don't know. We can't be trapped here." Tension surged as the figure began to glow, the light transforming it into a ghostly visage. Was it human? Or something else entirely. As they came closer, fear coiled around Sarah's heart. What awaited them? A rescue or something far worse? The figure stood motionless, a harbinger of the darkness still lingering in the hollow. What was it trying to tell them? The van came to a jolting stop, the engine sputtering like it too was afraid of what lay ahead. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird, her breath caught in her throat. The ghostly figure stared directly at them, its features too dim to fully comprehend but unmistakably human, a woman, draped in tattered garments that fluttered like phantoms against the night. "Mom, who is that?" Tommy's voice quivered, clutching Sarah's arm, the warmth of his small hand barely offering comfort. I don't know, honey," Mom replied, her voice shaky. The woman raised her hands slowly, beckoning them with a gesture that seemed both inviting and ominous. It felt like an illusion, a mirage yearning to lead them into the depths of uncertainty. "Should we go?" Dad asked, his voice barely a whisper, echoing the doubt hanging over them. "No!" Sarah shouted, desperation edging her tone. "What if she's a trap?" But the woman stood firm, her pale face illuminated by the flickering headlights, eyes glowing like twin stars in the pitch of night. She mouthed words Sarah couldn't quite hear, the wind snatching them away before they could take form. "Maybe she can help us," Mom suggested, the fear in her voice dissipating slightly as hope dared to raise its head. "Perhaps she can explain what's going on." "What's going on is we need to get out of here." Sarah shot back, her voice sharp. "What if that thing," she gestured toward the trees where the grotesque figure had vanished, "comes back?" The tension weighed heavy in the van, filling the air with a stifling dread, and all at once they understood they could sit here and debate their fate, or they could act. "Forget her," Dad finally said, gripping the wheel tighter. "I'm driving." He put the van into reverse, the engine howling, but the woman stepped forward abruptly, her face twisting with anguish. Something deep inside Sarah twisted with sympathy, but panic surging through the van drowned it out. "Stop!" she screamed. The woman pressed her hands against the windshield, her mouth moving faster now, words spilling out like frantic water. But all Sarah could see were her eyes wide, desperate, pleading. "Get back!" Dad shouted, but it was too late. The van's lights flickered again, casting enough illumination to reveal another figure emerging from the trees, this one larger and more menacing, roughly shaped like a hulking shadow that preyed upon their fear. "Run!" Mom yelled, her voice breaking. Before Dad could react, Sarah lunged for the gearshift, wrenching it back to drive. The van lunged forward, tires spinning on the gravel, as the sound of claws raked against the rear of the vehicle echoed like death's drum. As they barreled deeper into the darkness, the haunting shrieks of the woman faded behind them, swallowed by the night. Each thud of Sarah's heart was matched by the relentless pounding of pursuing feet that seemed to rise from the earth itself. "Go faster!" Tommy cried, panic-stricken. "I can't!" Mom gasped, eyes darting ahead, fear painted across her face. A burst of wind slammed against the van, rattling it violently. In the distance, the road forked, one path illuminated by a pale glow, the other sinking deeper into shadow. "Mom! Which way?" Tommy begged, his voice steady despite his fear. "Left!" Mom shouted against the whirl of chaos, her heart screaming for survival. But as they turned, the headlights caught yet another figure, this one, tall and menacing, shrouded in a cloak of darkness, blocking their only escape route. "Not again!" Sarah cried, the growl of the engine blending into a cacophony of terror. "Brace yourselves!" Dad shouted just before the van skidded to a halt, tires screeching against the gravel. What did these figures want? Were they seeking help or were they toying with their fates? In one swift motion, as they prepared to flee on foot, the woman appeared beside the van once more, her dark silhouette mingling with the shadows. "You must listen," she whispered urgently, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. As they faced this yet another manifestation of fear, one question hung heavy in the air: would they dare to hear her warning? Or would they plunge into the night, unrelenting? The answers were just beyond their reach, suspended in the grip of fear. Where would they find safety if it even existed? As the shadowy figures closed in, a cold dread settled around the Davis family, stifling their breaths. They were trapped between two fates: listen to the ghostly woman or speed into the unknown. Fear gripped Sarah's heart, and she strained against the urge to bolt. "Mom! What do we do?" Tommy's small voice wavered, echoing the uncertainty that clutched them tightly, but Mom didn't respond immediately, her gaze riveted on the woman before them, who stood shaking, her lips moving rapidly as if trying to relay a vital message. "Please, we have to go," Dad urged, restless. "There's no time." Yet in that moment, something shifted within Sarah. Maybe it was the flicker of compassion she felt for the hopeless figure, or perhaps a deep instinct urging them to listen. "Wait," she blurted out. "She's trying to warn us." The woman's haunted eyes seemed to grasp the flicker of hope, brightening for just an instant. "Help before it takes everything," she gasped, her voice a whisper barely rising above the swirling winds. "Did you hear that?" Tommy whispered, squeezing Sarah's arm tighter, the boy's innocent heart racing in tandem with the chaos. "What's coming?" It was the moment of truth. They could either surrender to fear or dig deeper into the shadows, risking everything in their quest for answers. "Mom, Dad, what if she knows how to stop it?" Sarah urged, her heart pounding and voice shaking with urgency. Mom glanced at Dad, indecision flickering across her face. A silence thick with tension hung heavy in the air as Sarah struggled with her own fear. The shadows loomed, hungry and ready to pounce. "Listen to her," Sarah begged. "We can't leave until we understand what's happening. We have to know what's behind all of this." With trembling hands, Dad finally nodded. "What do you want?" he called out to the woman, voice strained. "Tell us." The woman took a step closer, her spectral figure blending with the shadows. "The fog, it's a prison. It holds the lost souls, those who cannot find their way home," she whispered. "You must confront the darkness binding you or be doomed to join them. It feeds on your fear, your secrets." A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The weight of her family's unspoken troubles pressed closer than ever. "Our secrets?" she whispered back, caught between her heartstrings and rising panic. The past was creeping back, twisting deeper into the present, like the fog swirling around them. "Each of you carries something," the woman said, glancing between them. "You must face it. Only then will the shadows release you." "Face what?" Tommy asked, voice small and muffled in the charged atmosphere. The woman turned her gaze to the trees, shadows flickering like restless spirits. "Your fears, your truth. Only together can you dispel the darkness binding you. Speak your truths, let the fog know you are not afraid." Sarah felt a rush of clarity. Her internal battles, the pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing her family flooded her mind. Each family member wore facades designed to protect them from the pain of reality, yet it began to crack under this profound fear. "I'm scared," Sarah said, summoning her courage. "I've always felt like I wasn't enough, like I'll screw everything up." A ripple of understanding seemed to cross her parents' faces. "Is that why you don't let us in?" Mom said, voice cracking. "Because you're afraid of being judged?" "Yes," Sarah admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "But now's not the time. Unmask it together. I can't do it alone." "I've been struggling too," Dad surprised them all, his voice breaking even further. "I'm terrified I can't protect you, that I've let you down." The shadows shrank back, as if recoiling from his admission. "Mom?" Tommy's voice was small but firm. "What about your fears?" Mom took a deep breath, resolve brewing from deep within. "I'm afraid of losing you all, of not being enough for this family." Silence fell over them, a heavy blanket that pressed like the fog. Dark shapes inched closer, but the light began to grow, drawing power from their truths. Together, Sarah urged, her heart pounding as they locked eyes. We can do this. All those lost souls, this is their chance, too. The woman nodded faintly, the glow of her spirit illuminating the shape around them. You must choose to confront it, she murmured, voice quiet yet strong. Let go, and the fog will recede. Nodding, they grasped hands, forming a small circle inside the minivan, raw vulnerability sparking alive between them. I'm enough, Sarah said firmly, conviction ringing in her voice. I am worthy of love, Dad added, voice steadying with each word. I am strong, Mom said, her grip tightening. Tommy wiped his tears, finally bold enough to declare, and I will be brave. Suddenly, there was a loud crack like thunder, but it was only the fog shifting, tearing apart as if breaking free from chains. The shadows receded violently, hulls muted by their shared strength. The ghostly woman smiled sweetly, and with that smile, a thin beam of light broke through the trees, illuminating a path ahead. The fog thinned down a newly revealed road before them, shadows fading with every breath they took. So long as you carry your truths, the woman whispered, you are free. Thank you. Sarah shouted, and the woman simply nodded before fading back into the mist, her presence a gentle breeze. As the fog lifted, a sense of overwhelming relief washed over them. They could finally move forward. No more running. No more hiding, the engine roared back to life, driving the van forward like it had wings. Together, they sped into the newly illuminated road, a world unfurling before them, bright and vivid. The shadows may always linger, but now they were armed with the truth. Together, they could face anything: doubt, fear, the darkness ahead. And in that moment, they felt an unbreakable bond as a family, ready to face life head-on. Hold on to that truth, Dad said, smiling through the fear. Together. Sarah echoed, as they sped into a future that was no longer shrouded in darkness, and ahead, the road seemed endless, but now it was theirs. They had fought the shadows and won. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to never miss a mind-blowing story like this again. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep us alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what you just witnessed. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Thank you later.